This is the EVVR Smart Plug, an all-new smart home device that has energy monitoring, HomeKit capability, and all sorts of other very nice features that I have not seen on a smart plug before. In this video, I'm going to open it, test it out, and let you know what I think about it. So let's start by opening it up. This video is sponsored by EVVR, so thanks to them for sending this out and giving me a chance to look at it. And firstly, I did just want to note that this plug is available for all regional power types. Obviously for me, being in the US, I'm going to be using the Type B plug, but when you go to order this, you can order it to your specific plug type. I would definitely say that this is the most interesting smart plug that I've ever seen. Instead of being a small rectangular block like most other smart plugs are, this one actually looks more like a small extension cord. And there is a good reason for that, which is actually one of its main features, which is space saving. Most other smart plugs plug directly into the wall and end up taking over a lot of space, not only in sticking out of the wall, but also in width by a few inches in either direction. And the shape of those plugs makes them a lot harder and less versatile to use when you're trying to put the plug behind something like a TV stand or a fridge. Especially considering that not only do you have to put the smart plug into the wall, but you also have to plug your device into that plug, which makes it stick out even further. With EVVR's smart plug, you have a 90-degree angled space-saving plug. This will allow you to plug it into the wall, but also still give you a lot of room to push things into place and have them flush instead of sticking out. So it's 90-degree angled as to not stick out of the wall, and there also is a 45-degree angle on it as well, so you can still plug things under it too. It is not going to block the plug above or below the one it's in. This plug does also have a lot of smart features too. Firstly, integrating it into HomeKit is as simple as opening up the Home app, pressing Add Device, and then scanning the included QR code that comes in the packaging. Once you add it there, you can control this device from an iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, or Mac. And if you have a HomePod or an Apple TV, you can also use that to set up automations on your EVVR devices. So that would be for things like turning it on or off based on a schedule at a certain time every day, grouping it into other devices or existing automations. Those can all be done on the Home app. And if you download the separate EVVR app, you do have a few other features there too, like the button lock feature. If you turn this on, it disables the physical button that's on the device. Now normally you can press that button to turn something on or off without having to use a device, but if you want to prevent something like little hands running around your house and turning things off, then you can turn this on and have the button not function. You can also use the EVVR app to set the power on configuration. That just means that if you run into something like a power outage, once the power comes back on, the EVVR plug won't just default to being on or off. You can choose what it's defaulted to. And speaking of outages, if you have an internet outage, the EVVR app does also have a few nice features for that too. Firstly, if you have your smart plug plugged into your router and it detects a network outage, it will actually automatically turn your router off and back on to try to reset it to fix that issue. And if it's a more significant outage that can't be solved by a simple restart, the plug does continue to do the energy monitoring with or without Wi-Fi. So that is good to know that you're at least not going to lose any of the energy monitoring features, even if there's an internet outage. And side note, in the app, there is also a log that keeps track of whenever the plug is used, so you can have a history of when it was turned on or off. Now the EVVR plug can power up to 16 amps, which is definitely enough for most household electronics and appliances. That means that you can plug it into just about anything, a fridge, a TV, Christmas lights, or in my case, what I used it most for is my water dispenser. And the reason I chose the water dispenser is it can actually get really loud at times. So sometimes, like right now, I'll be filming in my living room and I need an easy way to turn off the water dispenser if it's making some loud noises. Using this plug has given me an easy way to do so. Plus, an added benefit of using it there is that 90-degree space-saving head on the plug has allowed me to push the water dispenser a lot more flush to the wall than I did previously. That all aside, even if you make a mistake and plug something into this device that requires more than 16 amps, the smart plug does have some built-in safety features too. And that includes automatic shut-off when there's an excessive load and thermal protection to avoid overheating. Basically what I'm saying is, regardless of what you plug in, it does not allow itself to draw too much power or overheat. Aside from all that, this plug does also do real-time energy monitoring too. Using the EVVR app, you can see in real time what kind of power your device is pulling, and also look back at historical data for how much power it's used previously. This is a really handy tool to see what kind of power your devices are actually using, what time of day they're used the most, and the peaks and valleys of when you might see the most energy consumption on any device it's plugged into. This is also a perfect tool to use to lower your energy bill. And what I mean by that is when you do some homework and take a look at the energy consumption on your devices, especially if you look at it historically over maybe a week or so, you can make and integrate an energy saving plan. Basically just take note of when the best times of day would be to turn these devices on, and if you have something like I use, the water dispenser, that can wait and not be used in on-peak hours, just have the plug set to turn off during those on-peak hours and then turn it back on once you're off-peak and energy is cheaper. This kind of plan obviously can't be integrated onto every device, especially ones that need to be powered on at all times, but it is a good way to save money on things that don't need to be powered on all the time, but are still consuming energy without you really thinking about it. This smart plug also has a feature where it will automatically turn off devices that are in standby mode. So if you aren't using something like your TV or your Xbox, instead of them sitting there idling and still drawing power to turn on their LED lights or do background tasks, you can have the plug automatically detect when they're in this standby mode and turn them off completely so there's no more power consumption. And as far as energy saving, the plug itself actually has a significantly lower power consumption than most other smart plugs. According to EVVR, this plug differentiates itself by using a magnetic latching relay, which actually decreases its power consumption by 90% when comparing to other smart plugs. Pretty cool. That all being said, I do always like to mention that every product does have its downsides, but to be honest, with this smart plug, I did not run into many. The main downside, in my opinion, has to do with HomeKit. The problem is that you can't really automate this device unless you have a HomePod or an Apple TV. Now obviously that's not a limitation of the EVVR plug itself, that's more a limitation on the HomeKit side of things, but it is something to know if you don't have a fully fleshed out HomeKit system. And outside of that, EVVR has also told me that this can be integrated into Home Assistant, so if you want to avoid HomeKit altogether, you can. Otherwise, the only other downside I'd consider is that this device is technically bigger than most other smart plugs. I mean, that is kind of just a natural consequence of the space-saving design since it has that 90-degree angle, but it is something to know, especially if you're trying to fit this into a tight space, that this one is a lot longer than most smart plugs are. If you're interested in checking it out, the EVVR Smart Plug is available for pre-order right now, and I'll have links in the description. And thank you again to EVVR for sponsoring this video. I've loved their products and I love supporting startup companies, so if you want to do the same, make sure you check them out. If you found this video useful, make sure you leave me a like and definitely subscribe to my channel. I have all sorts of tech content that I think you'll love. And I actually just reviewed another one of EVVR's products, which is their in-wall relay. That video will be here if you want to check it out. Thank you so much for watching.